So if you're not aware, the Supreme Court ends Biden's eviction moratorium. The ruling followed political and legal maneuvering by the administration to retain protections for tenants. It puts hundreds of thousands at risk of being put out of their homes. Supreme Court on Thursday rejected the Biden administration's latest moratorium on evictions, ending a political and legal dispute during a public health crisis, which the administration's shifting positions has subjected it to criticism from adversaries and allies alike. The court issued an 8-page majority opinion. An unusual move in a ruling on an application for emergency relief where terse orders are more common. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. The decision puts hundreds of thousands of tenants at risk of losing shelter, while the administration struggles to speed the flow of billions of dollars in federal funding to people who are behind in rent because of the coronavirus pandemic and its associated economic hardship. Only about $5.1 billion of the $46.5 billion in aid had been dispersed by the end of July. So all that money's just sitting there. Gee, I wonder why it's so easy for Jeff Bezos, big man Jeff, to just ship everything out to all 50 states. And we can't figure out how to get that money to people who need help. Just like with the PPP loans. If you don't have the infrastructure set up for a crisis, you have to scramble to create it, and therefore it creates more problems because it's not going to be perfect on step 1. Therefore, it's going to be more complicated to get to step 2. And by the time you get to step 2, you have to go back to step 1 because you already fucked up there. The majority opinion, which was unsigned, said the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had exceeded its authority. The CDC had imposed a nationwide moratorium on evictions and reliance on a decades-old statute that authorizes it to implement measures like fumigation and pest extermination. It strains credulity to believe that this statute grants the CDC the sweeping authority that it asserts. These questions call for considered decision-making informed by full briefing and argument. The answers impact the health of millions. We should not set aside the CDC's eviction moratorium in the summary proceeding. The majority said the issues were fully considered straightforward. It is indisputable that the public has a strong interest in combating the spread of the COVID-19 Delta variant, but our system does not permit agencies to act unlawfully, even in the pursuit of desirable ends. In other words, you have a little bit too much power. We do not like that. You cannot just do that, even if it's the right thing to do. I don't think you should be the one to do it. So who the fuck else should do it? If a federally imposed eviction moratorium is to continue, Congress must specifically authorize it. All right, Congress, do the thing then. As a result of this ruling, families will face the painful impact of evictions, and communities across the country will face greater risk of exposure to COVID-19. The ruling also renewed pressure on congressional Democrats to try to extend the freeze over the opposition of Republicans. Blah, blah, blah. But landlords, fuck landlords, who have said the moratorium saddled them with billions of dollars in debt, hailed the move. The government must move past failed policies and begin to seriously address the nation's debt tsunami, which is crippling both renters and housing providers alike. It will most likely take a while for the backlog of eviction cases in many states to result in the displacement of renters, but tenant groups in the South, where fast-track evictions are common, are bracing for the worst. In recent days, Mr. Biden's team has been mapping out strategies to deal with the likely loss of the moratorium, with a plan to focus on its efforts on a handful of states, including South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Ohio, that have large backlogs of unpaid rent and few statewide protections for tenants. Okay, blah, 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 did not act. This is a mad long article for no reason. Many states and localities, including New York and California, have extended their own moratoriums of providing another layer of protection for some renters. In some places, judges, aware of the potential for large numbers of people to be put out on the street as even if the pandemic intensifies again, have said that they would slow walk cases and make greater use of eviction diversion programs. It is astonishing to me that this country will do everything in its power to force people to do the absolute worst to survive. I don't know how this message is ever going to get out. I don't know who is ever listening. I don't know how it's going to come across. But there is no way that we are the richest nation on earth and we can't figure out a simple blanket solution for debt and for homelessness. Do you think that's fair? Do you think at all to say to people that we know that there's a public health crisis, but good luck? Like, it really feels like they'd be saying, fuck it, whatever, not my problem. And it's like, wow, you really just want to kill off the poor. And I hate when people say, oh, dystopian times are coming. Dystopian times are here. We are here right now. And no matter how you want to deny that, shit like that pisses me off. Because who are you backing? Who are you capping for here? Who's the landlords? Figure that shit out yourself. Get a job. Why can't you get the job? Here I am knowing I am immunocompromised, and if I get COVID, I die. But you got to go to work, and then you don't raise the wages, so I can't make enough rent on one job, so I got to work two. That's double the times of exposure. Great, awesome. Just so I can live in that shitty one bedroom shack that you're charging me $3,700 for. Like, come on, do better. And then you're saying you got to put it on Congress. Like, I get it on a. Okay, so here's where I'll do the thing, the both sides thing, because y'all love that so much. I understand, like, the idea of the CDC not having the power to, like, say that, but, like, we're all saying it. The country's saying it. So who gives a shit? Who gives the order? Everyone follows suit. Just do that. There should be clear cut, like, we shouldn't have to bide our time and try to figure out the ins and outs of who should do this and how that should work. Blanket. Pay people to stay home. Everyone shut the fuck up. You could have expanded the job market to grocery deliveries. Anything that needs to be done outside could be done by a set group of people who come bring it. Oh, if that person has COVID, at least they weren't interacting with thousands of people a day sitting at a Target line, breathing it out and hoping that somebody didn't give it to them. There are solutions to a lot of the problems that America faces, and it refuses to do it for the sake of the capitalistic greed. That is the only thing. And it creates a sense of selfishness within inside each person by default, because there's no coverage for a community-wide issue. If everybody on my block and the next 8 blocks were all about to be evicted, the entirety of the neighborhood wouldn't sit around and be like, oh, too bad for them. But in theory, the entire community would have to come together, because there's nobody at the top that would say, wait, that's a problem. They would say, your personal decisions have led you to a bad point in your life, and maybe you should just deal with that. Like, fuck off. You don't pay people enough to be able to afford 1 bedroom, let alone a studio. You don't build houses, or you don't build affordable housing to supplement or be at the state of the wage that currently exists. So people can't pay the rent, even having a job. And then you're going to evict them for a global catastrophe? That's like getting nuked. And that's like if California got nuked and the surrounding blast waves hurt almost all of the West, and right in the Midwest, all the way to the East Coast, they were like, life as usual. Who gives a shit? That's them. How we one people, one nation, undivided, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We literally don't give a shit about each other. Like, hey, it's okay. Hey, Supreme Court of the United States Supreme Court. Here's a message for you. Here's a note for you. Maybe, just maybe, when it comes to crises that are unfathomable, maybe we should just not give a shit about those rules at the moment. If a general consensus is like evicting people would be bad right now, just don't evict people. Oh, but what about the banks? What about the renters? What about the loans? You set those people up to fail in that position, and now you have to bail them out too. Just like we bailed out the banks, just like we bailed out the automotive, just like we bailed out the motherfucking... We gave more money to the army. We gave money to Israel. Like, pick a lane. You got all that money for that industrial military complex, and you don't have enough money to solve homelessness? Maybe if we built homes to house people and not for profit, we wouldn't give a shit about it. And if you did that, you could create jobs out of that. I'll tell you what, your rent's $200, but if you need the super to come over, it's $100 an hour. Oh, more supers. I gladly work there. Hell yeah, I make mad money. And I could get my craft going. I get a license for that, get my trade school on. I know that's not breaking. I hope that's not breaking. It probably is breaking. Like a bunch of issues, a bunch of solutions right there in front of your face. You talk about job opportunities created out of the necessity for a revenue to start spinning in places that need it. Like, this is not hard. And then you create drab ass projects that get roach infested and just smell bad and feel bad. And people live there and they get trapped in that ideology of, I'm never going to get out of here, but it's affordable housing, so I should feel grateful for it. They can't even make a dime off it living there for 40 years. You're just renting. You're just going to be paying that forever. Like, fuck you. No way. Take the time to think about people as human beings and say, yeah, in normal cases, the CDC overthrew their guidance. But to be honest, maybe we should just let this one slide. How about that?